As I mentioned in my intro, The Captive City was shot on location in Reno, Nevada, the biggest little city in the world. Wise shot the whole thing in 21 days, using lots of locals, even in speaking parts. Of course, the town in the film is supposed to be a generic Midwestern city, not one located in a state where gambling was legal. And that's why Wise had to reshoot several exterior scenes. When he looked at the dailies, recognizable signage was in the background of certain shots, specifically the neon facade of Harold's Club, a well-known casino. And that had to go, or it would have completely ruined the film's verisimilitude. Now, this was not the last time Robert Wise worked from true crime material. I Want to Live was his 1958 screen version of the real-life saga of Barbara Graham, convicted as an accessory to murder and executed in the gas chamber at San Quentin. Susan Hayward won an Oscar for Best Actress for her portrayal of the hard-luck dame. For that, Wise used an entirely different style than he brought to bear on this film, or his 1959 crime classic, Odds Against Tomorrow. I don't know if there was ever a director more adept at adapting to different material. Wise didn't really have a style. The story dictated his approach, and Wise brought keen intelligence, a facility for telling detail, and extraordinary empathy to all his projects. Wise told a funny story about the scoring of this film. Composer Bernard Herrmann had done the music for Wise's previous movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. When he learned Wise was making a crime picture, Herrmann begged to do the score. Wise kept putting him off because he couldn't afford to pay Herrmann what he was worth. And as an independent production, they just didn't have the budget. But Herrmann was persistent and demanded a meeting. He couldn't believe the director wouldn't want a Herrmann score on his latest film. So finally, worn down by the composer's insistence, Wise agreed, but said all he could pay was $10,000. That was the entire budget for music. Herrmann barked that he had never been so insulted in his life and stormed out. Coincidentally, the score for The Captive City was by Jerome Moross, a New York-based child prodigy who composed chamber pieces and symphonies while still a teenager. The first public performance of one of his compositions was in 1930 when Moross was only 17, and the conductor was Bernard Herrmann. The Captive City was Moross's third film score after he'd served many years in Hollywood as an orchestrator and conductor for other composers' work. He'd be nominated for a 1958 Oscar for scoring The Big Country, directed by William Wyler. The writer of The Captive City, Alvin Josephy, also played a big part in its promotion, touring the U.S. to speak about his experiences investigating organized crime. Robert Wise thought enough of his work that he hired Josephy to write his next picture, a comedy called Something for the Birds, which may be the first Hollywood movie to tackle environmental issues. It concerned a woman trying to get government protection for California's wild condors. This was 1952. Now, right about the same time, Josephy took an interest in the affairs of Native Americans, which would end up being his life's passion. He wrote a half-dozen books on the subject and became an advisor on government policies aimed at aiding Native Americans. He was also the editor-in-chief of American Heritage magazine from 1960 to 1978. Now, as I mentioned at the top, Aspen Pictures, the company formed by Robert Wise and Mark Robeson, had to find creative ways to promote this film since they couldn't rely on star power. One angle they pursued was switching the film's world premiere to New York to capitalize on the March 1952 murder of Arnold Schuster. Schuster was a 24-year-old haberdasher and amateur detective who fingered notorious bank robber Willie Sutton for the cops. He'd spotted Sutton on the bus and trailed him into a garage where Sutton was trying to jump-start a dead battery in his car. Before he could get it going, the cops, alerted by Schuster, pounced on him. Arnold Schuster was celebrated in the press for accomplishing what the law had been unable to do for years. Less than a month later, Schuster was murdered outside his Brooklyn home, assassination style. The killing was purportedly ordered by Gambino family crime boss Albert Anastasia, who was supposed to have declared, "I can't stand squealers. Hit that guy." Now, despite their efforts to coattail on timely headlines, Aspen didn't turn a profit on The Captive City. Other films that copied its expose style with bigger stars, like Paramount's The Turning Point, Republic's Hoodlum Empire, and Allied artists' The Phoenix City Story, they fared better at the box office. In Hollywood, it rarely pays to be first. Even Estes Kefauver didn't get the bump he anticipated. The Democrats that year ended up choosing Adlai Stevenson as their candidate, not Kefauver. Dwight Eisenhower won the presidency in a landslide. And Aspen only made one more movie, 1953's Return to Paradise, directed by Mark Robeson and starring Gary Cooper. Then the company disbanded. Let us know what you thought of The Captive City on our Facebook page and Twitter feed, and then make a date to be back in Noir Alley next week when I will present the TCM premiere of a film restored by my Film Noir Foundation, the incredible Try and Get Me, one of the most gut-wrenching noirs of all time, also based on a true crime. You may never have heard of it, but I guarantee you'll never forget it. See you back here next week.